Here's number 2. Attitude. Attitude's how you feel. First of all, we're affected by what we know. Second, we're affected by how we feel about what we know. The emotional part now. This is a major part of the 5 pieces. How I feel. Now, there's a lot of different ways to feel. Here's one. If this is all they pay, I'm not coming early and I'm not staying late on the job. Right? We call that one way to feel. Isn't that a selection process? If this is all they pay, I'm not coming early and I'm not staying late. We call that your choice of attitude. Now, do you think that attitude, if you kept it for the next 5 years, would greatly affect your fortunes? The answer is, of course. You cannot escape the accumulated effect of the selection of your attitude. You can't escape it. So one of the major things to check is, how do I feel? And am I on track or off track with my attitude? Now, attitude's not that easy to fix. It's not that easy to get information. It's hard to look up attitude in the Yellow Pages. If you could put your car in the shop and go next door and get your attitude tuned, wouldn't that be nice, right? But where do you go? How do we engage in the kind of philosophical thinking that will refine our attitude to give us a chance for future fortune rather than what will be missing in the future? So this is big, attitude. Here's another attitude. No matter what they pay, I always come early and I always stay late to invest in my own future. We call that another attitude about the same job. Now, why would one person have one attitude, another person have another attitude? We call that mysteries of the mind. Right? I don't know. Everybody has to choose for themselves. Everybody has to decide by education. Now, if you didn't know what the consequences were going to be, it could be very easy to choose the wrong attitude and not discipline yourself to the right attitude. So a big portion of our life is affected by how we feel. Let me give you just a quick list about the feelings that affect our lives. Number 1, it's how you feel about the past. Boy, it's easy to carry the past as a burden instead of as a school. It's easy to let the past overwhelm you instead of let the past instruct you. How to feel about the past hurts and the past losses and the past difficulties and the times you failed and the times it didn't work, the accumulation of all of that. How you feel about that is going to greatly affect your future in your life. One of the major things that affects your life is how you feel about the future. Our life is affected by 2 major things. One is price and the other is promise. And it's not that easy to pay the price if you can't see the promise. I think kids are having problems these days trying to pay the price because they can't see the promise. But all of us wouldn't mind paying the price if we could have a clear view of tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. If we had the high assurance with great probability of how it's going to work out, do you think we would hesitate to pay? The answer is no. But everybody hesitates to pay if the future isn't clear. So to help the kids these days, we got to do 2 things. Help them to see the promise and help them pay the price. But we can pay if we can see. My karate instructor said, Mr. Rohn, you cannot believe the incredible feeling of walking down any city street unafraid. I said, let's get on with the classes, right? Hey, I will sweat. I will put myself through the paces, right? What would we do for an extraordinary promise? Answer, the most unbelievable things. Would you crack the books? Would you burn the midnight oil? Would you engage in the extra thoughts and the extra disciplines if the promise was adequate? And the answer is, of course. But who wants to read? Who wants to burn the midnight oil? Who wants to put themselves through the paces if the promise isn't clear? Important, price and promise. Here's number 3. It's how you feel about each other. It's so important. Attitude about society, country, state and city, community, family, enterprise, office, company, corporation, division. It's so important to have a unique understanding about other human beings and what makes a good life, what constitutes a good life. How you feel about each other. I've got a good phrase for you. You can't succeed by yourself. So to have a unique, refined sense of appreciation for each other is prerequisite. It takes each other to build a society. It takes all of us to build a country, to build a nation. It takes all of us to build a community. Key phrase, you can't succeed by yourself. I gave a speech not long ago to the Rotary Club of Culver City, California, and I was unusually affected by the Pledge of Allegiance that day. Big, strong voices. It's a big, strong club. And it was going through my mind the next few days, the Pledge of Allegiance. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, what an important key document, right? The Pledge of Allegiance. And so I started writing, and I wrote a discourse on the Pledge of Allegiance. I took each key word and did a little summary for our Tape of the Month Club. Wow, the Pledge of Allegiance is unique. It starts with I and ends with all. The pledge starts with I and ends with all. It takes all of us to make any one of us successful. And a unique, refined appreciation of the all of us is what makes the I of us do much better. That appreciation of society. It takes all of us to make a market. We need each other's ideas and inspiration. And once you have that sense of appreciation of the all of us, now you and your place and your possibilities and your opportunities now start to really soar when you understand how important it is within the framework of the all of us. So you can't succeed by yourself. It's hard to find a rich hermit. Right? Now here's the big biggie. It's how you feel about yourself. That's major. Understanding self-worth is the beginning of progress. How valuable are you? What could you do if you had all the skills? If you took the extra classes and burned the midnight oil, what could you do? What true value could you become? That is one of the better exercises. What could I become in terms of value? What could I really do in the marketplace, in enterprise, family, home, love, experience, marriage, friendship? How valuable could I become? Am I valuable enough to work on what all is still not functioning in my life to full capacity? If I'm operating at 20%, what could I possibly do with the other 80%? And do I have it in knowledge and worth and value and experience? Once you start understanding this part of you, understanding how valuable you are, it is a whole new experience, understanding self-worth. So attitude plays a big, major part in how our life works out. Number one is philosophy. Number two is attitude. Number three is activity. Activity is what you do. So our lives, first of all, are affected by what we know. Second, our lives are affected by how we feel. Third, our lives are affected by what we do. It is so important to understand this. If you want to influence and help people, here's the key. Success is a doing. You've got to actually do it. Activity is high priority in the life process to try to get maximum benefit out of what we have available. Activity. Now here's an important question. What is your philosophy about activity? What about hard work? What about long hours? What about full days? If you're doing something, how hard should you go at it? How much time should you put in? Everybody has to develop their philosophy about activity. Just by way of review, let me quote you. Old Testament says, 6 days activity, 1 day rest. That's called philosophy of ratio of activity. What is a good ratio of rest and activity? Old Testament says 6 days of one, 1 day of the other. You say, well, that's kind of old and outmoded. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe that's too old a philosophy. The old 6-1. I don't know. Who knows? Now, we've got it down to 5 and 2. Maybe 5 and 2 is okay. I don't know. If God would have thought of 5 and 2, he might have made it 5 and 2. Right? You can't think of everything when you're putting one of these together, I guess. Who knows? But we've all got to have a philosophy about activity. Because your philosophy of activity will affect the rest of your life. Not to think so is naive. I've got a good clue on rest. Make rest a necessity, not an objective. The reason for life is enterprise. The reason for life is productivity. The reason for life is to see what we can do with the seasons and the chances and our mind and our spirit. ourselves, to see what we can do. That's what life is all about, to see what you can do. Now, the doing, you've got to have a philosophy on how much time you're going to spend doing. And I've decided that enterprise is better than ease. If you rest too long, the weeds take the garden in the summer. So you can't rest too long.